Well, hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Dykman, and I'm the City of Piedmont Sustainability Program Manager. Thanks again for BayREN for hosting this great forum and inviting me to share information about Piedmont's building decarb policies. So for those who don't know, Piedmont is a small residential city located in the East Bay. The city has been entirely built out for over 50 years and contains some of the oldest homes in the state. Like other jurisdictions, Piedmont has a climate action plan that sets forth greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. And an integral component of Piedmont's climate action plan aims to decarbonize the residential building sector, which is one of the top sources of emissions in the city. Natural gas use in buildings, of course, in particular, is one of the largest obstacles to meeting climate action plan goals. And thus, the city has focused on a transition to electric appliances and increasing local resiliency through renewable energy production and storage. And ultimately, decarbonization policies help to improve the health, welfare, and safety of the community, as well as reducing emissions. So win-win. So in light of this, the theme of this webinar, the two policies I'll be focusing on today are Piedmont's REACH code and home energy assessment policy. So earlier this year, Piedmont became one of the first cities in the state to adopt REACH codes for existing buildings, as well as for new construction. At the same time, the city adopted a home energy policy assessment that requires the disclosure of a home energy score or home energy audit at point of listing for sale. And I'll talk more about these policies later in the presentation, but first just really want to start to focus on how they were developed. I'll also mention that prior to the adoption of those two policies, the city did adopt an additional energy assessment policy, which requires design review permits that may have an energy impact to submit energy assessment, audit, or score. So this slide showcases the timeline for policy development of the REACH code and the home energy assessment at the time of listing. As the graphic suggests, policy development was an iterative process with community feedback incorporated over the 2 years of the process, really from initial research and development all the way to adoption. Really, the main takeaway from this process was that public engagement at each step of policy development not only helped build a more robust policy, but also helped build an engaged and informed community who could help champion the policies in the years ahead. So now I just want to highlight two main milestones of our public engagement efforts. Oops. The first is public engagement during the initial development of the policies. So this occurred during the initial 6 months of our process and involved informing the community about the concept of REACH codes and home energy assessments, as well as receiving feedback. So outreach efforts included a community-wide online survey and 5 focus groups that were tailored to specific audiences, really business owners and residents. For each of these focus groups, though, this involved inviting a range of stakeholders from building professionals and contractors to local architects, real estate agents, solar installers, HVAC specialists, all electric advocates, utilities, and more. And one of the main outcomes from this initial phase of outreach included developing our REACH code to offer multiple electrification and insulation options and allowing residents to choose the option that they judge best for their own situation. The second phase of engagement followed the development of policies recommended for adoption. This was another 6-month process with the intent to publicize and describe the proposed policies, to better understand public response, and of course, generate comments for the City Council's consideration. So outreach efforts in this phase included conducting stakeholder interviews that were shared on the local TV station and online, the development of a comprehensive list of frequently asked questions and answers, a virtual town hall meeting that was held for residents to ask questions and learn more about the proposed policies from city staff, and 2 public opinion surveys held over the course of 6 months. And so one of the main outcomes from this stage of outreach included developing modifications to the proposed REACH codes following the first reading of the ordinance to City Council. And these modifications were really informed by public engagement during this phase, particularly by findings from the public opinion survey. So here I just wanted to highlight some key findings from the public opinion survey. So this slide just demonstrates the top concerns that residents had surrounding the electrification REACH codes. So as you can see, and as was previously mentioned during this webinar, top concerns include vulnerability of relying on electric appliances during power outages, the code being unfair to those who have already taken steps towards electrification and insulation improvements, and the cost of improvements. Other concerns raised included confusion of the code requirements themselves, government overreach, and a fear of restrictions, really specifically a fear of removing gas ranges from the kitchen. And these concerns really helped shape the modifications that we built in between the first and second reading of the ordinance. So although there were concerns, of course, many were in favor of the proposed policies. So the messages listed here were the most convincing arguments in favor of the policies. So these range from the impact of the policies in reducing emissions, positioning the city to align with state renewable goals, making financial resources available to help ease the transition, and understanding that one aspect of the REACH code was that these most expensive renovations to existing buildings would be the ones to trigger the policy. So now, given all the public outreach, how did these policies turn out? So this is just an overview of our REACH codes, and really just a quick rundown of them include that really the first element is that new construction of low-rise residential buildings and detached ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are required to use all electric building appliances. And then when looking at existing buildings, projects proposing an entirely new upper level or that increased total roof area by 30% or more are required to install solar on the roof. Then a renovation project on an existing building that's valued at $25,000 or more requires one item from a list of energy efficient insulation and heating system electrification improvements to be included in the renovation. And for those renovations that are over $100,000, that necessitates the selection of 2 items from this list. Other elements of the code include projects involving electrical panel upgrades are required to include capacity in the panel to accommodate future appliance electrification, and projects involving a kitchen or a laundry area renovation must include electrical outlets for future appliance installations. So here's just so here's just a quick list of the insulation and efficiency item improvement list. As you can see, these offer a range of options to meet all budget and types of properties. It may range from, of course, floor insulation all the way to replacing gas furnaces for heat pumps. So as I mentioned during the public engagement process, staff were responsive to community feedback. So this eventually led to incorporating an amendment that recognizes the work property owners have accomplished on their own initiative and allows a homeowner to provide a home energy score report. And that will help in lieu of requiring an energy efficiency upgrade. Then when it comes to the home energy assessment policy, in short, in tandem with the REACH codes, this was adopted and it requires at point of listing of sale of a property, a report from a home energy audit or home energy score. Post-adoption, so it has been just a couple of months since these ordinances came into effect. But as you can see, there's been a range of projects that have been triggered by the REACH codes, and our home energy assessment policies received a couple dozen of them thus far. So really, now that the policies are in place, the city really continues to work with the public to implement the requirements. I just wanted to highlight outreach with real estate agents, and outreach really focused on reaching out to agents early in the process, providing them information about the policies and providing a list of local energy assessment vendors and auditors, and really being able to promptly respond to any questions that they had, and letting them know that the city does not have an extended escrow period similar to EB-MUD's private sewer lateral certification. And the assessment can be submitted, just along with a home records search application. It also helped to have the policy in tandem with the REACH codes, which seem to get a lot of the focus, as well to have existing model policies in place, particularly Berkeley's BASO, to be a guiding force and reference points. Other outreach efforts included maintaining a comprehensive city website with lots of information to local vendors, providing direction to BayREN and other incentive programs, and of course, partnering with community groups to help spread the word. And of course, there are internal processes in place that included developing checklists and evaluation tools to measure the effectiveness of the REACH codes. And so that concludes my presentation. Thanks.